The heavy metal gates of Kirikiri Maximum Security Prison creaked open on a humid Lagos morning, releasing a woman who looked nothing like the Elizabeth Okoye who had entered 5 years ago. Her once vibrant face was now etched with lines of regret. Her eyes, which had once sparkled with ambition and maternal pride, now carried the weight of 3 dead bodies and a family destroyed by her own hands. Her hands, the same hands that had once tucked children into bed with loving care, trembled with the memory of what they had done in the darkness of a single night. A man waited for her outside the gates. Emeka Adebayo, her son, looked equally broken. His shoulders sagged under invisible weight. His eyes held the kind of haunted look that comes from knowing you've killed innocent people with your incompetence and lies. Mother and son embraced in silence, 2 people bound together by guilt, shame, and a crime that had destroyed everything they touched. "Mama," Emeka whispered, his voice cracking with years of nightmares. "Are you ready? Are you ready to face them?" Elizabeth nodded slowly, unable to speak. Ready? How could anyone be ready to face the stepson whose future you stole? The husband whose trust you shattered? The family you poisoned with jealousy and deception? They climbed into a rented car and began the journey to Lekki, to the house where their crimes had begun, where the seeds of deception had been planted in darkness 10 years ago. As the car navigated Lagos traffic, Elizabeth stared out the window at the city she had once conquered with lies. Now it felt like a prison larger than Kirikiri, every street corner a reminder of her fall from grace. The Lekki house stood before them like a monument to everything they had lost. Elizabeth remembered the first time she had walked through those gates as David's bride, full of hope and love and dreams of the perfect blended family. Now she walked through those same gates as a convicted criminal carrying the weight of academic fraud, 3 deaths, and a decade of lies. David opened the door. His face was harder now, weathered by betrayal, but standing strong. Beside him stood Toby, no longer the confused 16-year-old whose dreams had been stolen, but a confident young doctor in a white coat, fresh from saving lives at his own medical center. The 4 of them stood facing each other in the sitting room where they had once been a family. The air was thick with tension, with unspoken pain, with questions that had waited years for answers. Elizabeth opened her mouth to speak, to explain, to beg for forgiveness she knew she didn't deserve. But before we hear those words, before we witness this moment of reckoning, we need to understand how we got here. How did a loving stepmother become a convicted criminal? How did maternal love twist into something so poisonous it would cost 3 innocent lives? What choice, what moment, what desperate act of jealousy set this family on a collision course with tragedy? To understand this moment of confrontation, we must go back 10 years, back to a cemetery in Lagos, where a grieving widower named David Adebayo was about to make a choice that would change everything. Back to the beginning, where love and hope were still possible, before deception planted its poisonous seeds. This is the story of the Adebayo family, a story of love and betrayal, of ambition and destruction, of stolen dreams and deadly consequences, a story where a single night's deception would grow into a harvest of tragedy that no one could have imagined. Before we begin this journey, I need you to do something. If you love powerful stories about family, betrayal, and the devastating cost of lies, then smash that subscribe button right now. Hit the notification bell so you never miss another story from our channel. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Let us know. We love hearing from our global family. This story will grip your heart, challenge your beliefs about forgiveness, and remind you why truth always matters, no matter the cost. Now let's go back to where it all began. In the heart of Lagos, where neon lights dance with ancestral spirits, every choice carries the weight of destiny. This is the tale of David Adebayo, a man whose heart was broken by loss, warmed by hope, and nearly undone by deception. Like the trickster, Anansi weaving webs in the bustling markets of Balogun, fate spins threads of love and betrayal that no one can escape. Every story of shadows begins in light. In the quiet embrace of Echo Memorial Park, where sleek granite headstones gleam under Lagos' hazy sky, David Adebayo stood before his wife's grave. His tailored agbada swayed gently in the morning breeze. 3 years had passed since Aisha's laughter faded from their Lekki apartment. All that remained was the faint scent of her jasmine oil and the echo of her voice in their son's bedtime stories. "Daddy, you dey talk to Mummy's spirit again?" 8-year-old Toby's voice broke through the hum of distant Lagos traffic. His eyes, bright like his mother's, sparkled with the wisdom of a child raised in the city's hustle. He clutched a small wooden carving of a bird, a gift from his mother's last market visit. "I'm telling her how you aced your maths test, Toby. She'd be proud of her little professor." Toby grinned. His sneakers scuffed the gravel path playfully. "Teacher said Anansi's spirit still tricks people in Lagos markets. Does Mommy trick you from the stars?" David smiled, his hand ruffling Toby's hair. "Love no day play tricks, Toby. I believe she's watching us, guiding us from above." But love, David would soon learn, sometimes demands new beginnings, even when they feel like betrayals of sacred promises. That evening, as rain drummed on the tin roofs of Lekki's high-rise apartments, David's sister Funmi arrived, with a steaming bowl of egusi soup and words heavy with truth. The neon glow of the Lagos skyline flickered through the glass windows. It cast long shadows on the Yoruba shrine in the corner, where kola nuts rested as offerings to their ancestors. "David, you dey live like shadow for this Lagoso," Funmi said, her voice soft but firm. Her Ankara jumpsuit vibrant against the modern decor. "Toby needs more than a papa where they mourn. He needs a family where they shine." David's fingers tightened around his coffee mug. The city's pulse hummed outside the window. "Aisha's only been gone 3 years, Funmi. How I go move on?" "Toby day grow fast, David. Lagos no day wait for anybody, not even your grief." That night, as Toby slept under Adaya-patterned blankets, dreaming of drones and Yoruba folk tales, David stood at his apartment window. The Lekki Ikoyi link bridge glowed in the distance. Lightning sliced the sky like a message from the Orishas. He whispered to the storm, "Aisha, if I try to love again, help me find someone way go love our Toby like you did." Thunder rumbled across Lagos, as if the ancestors had heard. David Adebayo had made his choice. Tomorrow he would step into Lagos's chaos, opening his heart to new possibilities, unaware that fate was already weaving its web. The rain slowed, and the city's lights pulsed like a heartbeat. Across Lagos, in a cozy Victoria Island flat, a woman named Elizabeth Okoye tucked her own son into bed, wondering if love would ever find her again in this restless city. Their paths had not yet crossed, but the spirits of Lagos were drawing them together, and with that meeting would come joy beyond David's dreams, and a deception that could unravel everything. 6 months after that thunderous night of prayer, David Adebayo was about to discover whether fate would create a powerful delta or a dangerous flood. In Lagos, they say, when two rivers meet, destinies change. David adjusted his crisp white shirt in the mirror of a Café Neo in Victoria Island. His sister, Funmi, had been busy playing Lagos matchmaker, introducing him to women who, like him, carried the sweet burden of single parenthood. "Relax, David," Funmi whispered, stirring her cappuccino with confidence. "You look like you day prepare for job interview, not to meet fine woman." David chuckled nervously, his laugh mixing with the chatter of Lagos professionals. "Funmi, I know do this thing for over 10 years, oh. I forget how to talk to woman. Just be yourself, my brother. The right woman go see your good heart." The first woman was Aduni, a mathematics teacher with twin boys. She spoke passionately about education, but their conversation felt like a lesson plan rather than a spark. Then came Dr. Kemi, a pediatrician with a teenage daughter. But the interaction was as stiff as Lagos traffic on a Monday morning. And then, Elizabeth Okoye walked in. She moved with the grace of a woman who had learned to carry both strength and softness. Her Ankara dress flowed like poetry in motion. Her eyes held the warmth of Lagos sunsets. When she spoke about her 12-year-old son, Emeka, David heard the same protective love he felt for Toby. "I lost my husband in one motor accident 4 years ago," she shared, voice steady like the Lagos lagoon at dawn. "Emeka was only 8 then. Not just me and him since that time." David's heart opened, like the gates of Tafawa Balewa Square during a festival. "I understand that feeling completely. Toby was 5 when Aisha passed. Some days I day wonder if I be enough for him." Elizabeth's smile was like sunrise over the third mainland bridge. "The fact say you day worry about him. Tell me say you be more than enough. A papa, we care that much. Now exactly wherein any pikin need." Their first coffee stretched into 3 hours. They spoke of dreams, of children, of lonely nights in the Lagos hustle. Their love bloomed slowly, like hibiscus flowers in Lagos's rainy season. 2 months later, David introduced Elizabeth to Toby. The meeting was smoother than a journey on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Toby noticed immediately. "She day make you smile again, Papa." When Emeka met David, he proved to be thoughtful, well-mannered and intelligent, just as his mother described. The boys bonded over model planes and puzzles, complementing each other like palm wine and pepper soup. "He smart pass, but he no day treat me like small pikin," Toby confided. David's heart swelled. "Elizabeth day make me happy, and I think she fit complete our family." 10 months after that first meeting, David proposed at Tarkwa Bay, where Lagos meets the Atlantic. The waves whispered blessings as Elizabeth said, "Yes." Their wedding, a fusion of tradition and modernity, filled the Civic Center gardens with gold and green aso-ebi, as if royalty from ancient Benin had gathered. David's vows echoed across the lagoon. "Elizabeth, I promise to love not just you, but our complete family, Toby and Emeka, na our future, our legacy, and our greatest blessing." Elizabeth replied with tears in her eyes. "David, you don't give me second chance for love, and I promise to love both you and our boys with all my heart, to create a home full of laughter, learning, and unconditional love." Life in Lekki transformed. Elizabeth's warmth, Emeka's books, Toby's creativity filled the once quiet home with laughter, homework sessions, football matches, and movie nights. David became the father figure Emeka had longed for. Elizabeth became the mother Toby never remembered having. Soon, Amara was born. 2 years later, Falake arrived, completing their circle of love. The house buzzed with the beautiful chaos of a large Nigerian family. Both boys excelled in school, report cards proudly displayed on the refrigerator. "I dey proud of both my boys," Elizabeth would say. "Una go do great things for this life." But as the boys entered senior secondary school, a subtle shift began. It started small, a pause when Toby's results came in slightly higher than Emeka's, a tightness around Elizabeth's eyes when teachers praised Toby too enthusiastically. The seeds of something darker were beginning to sprout. The golden age of the Adebayo family was about to face its first real test. In Yoruba tradition, they say the tree that bears the sweetest fruit often attracts the most bitter insects. The Adebayo household was about to learn this ancient wisdom in the harshest way possible. SS3 had arrived like Lagos traffic at rush hour, intense, demanding, unforgiving. Toby, 16. Emeka, 17. Both in their final year, with jam and university applications hanging over them like storm clouds above Victoria Island. The dining table in Lekki had become a war zone of textbooks, past questions, and medical journals. Both boys dreamed of studying medicine, inspired by the doctors they'd heard about from Elizabeth's stories at LUTH. "I go study surgery," Emeka declared, voice full of older brother confidence. "I want save lives, like the consultants for LUTH. Toby smiled, quiet but resolute. "Me too. But I want specialize in pediatric surgery. Pikin dem need special care." David watched, pride swelling like the Lagos lagoon at high tide. Elizabeth smiled too, but if you looked closely, something flickered behind her eyes. It started small. When Toby scored 98% in mathematics and Emeka scored 94%, Elizabeth's congratulations were polite. "Well done, Toby. Mathematics na hard subject." But when Emeka scored higher in chemistry, her joy overflowed like fresh suya aroma in Ikeja. "Emeka, my son, you see how brilliant you be? Chemistry now your calling." David, busy with his construction company, missed these subtle shifts completely. WAEC results came. Toby, 9 A1s, perfection. Emeka, 7 A1s, 2 B2s, excellent, but not quite the same. David lifted Toby off the ground like the boy was still building model planes in their living room. "Toby, my son, Aisha go be proud of you from heaven." Elizabeth smiled, but her eyes stayed cool. In her heart, something toxic had been planted. Jam results repeated the same pattern. Toby, 346, Emeka, 318. Both admitted into medicine and surgery at Unilag. The house celebrated. "To Toby and Emeka," David toasted. "2 sons, 2 doctors. God don bless this family plenty." But in Elizabeth's heart, a shadow deepened. Her son, her blood, was always coming second to her stepson. But as the family cheered and the Afrobeats music filled their Lekki home, Elizabeth found herself watching Toby with eyes that had grown cold. This boy, this child who wasn't even her blood, was consistently outperforming her own son. Her Emeka, her flesh and blood, her pride and joy, was always coming second to his stepbrother. 3 months into their first year at Unilag's College of Medicine, an announcement appeared on the notice board that would change the trajectory of 2 young lives forever. Professor Adeyemi, the Dean of the College of Medicine, stood before the auditorium, filled with first-year medical students, his voice carrying the weight of opportunity. The Canadian government, in partnership with the University of Toronto, is offering 5 full scholarships for exceptional medical students. These scholarships cover tuition, accommodation, and living expenses for a 4-year accelerated medical program. Upon completion, successful candidates will be guaranteed positions in Canadian hospitals with starting salaries of $150,000 annually, plus comprehensive benefits including housing allowances and health care. The auditorium buzzed with excitement, like the Akija computer village on a Saturday morning. Students whispered among themselves, calculating possibilities and dreams. The requirements are stringent, Professor Adeyemi continued. Only students with a minimum CGPA of 4.5, exceptional leadership qualities, and demonstrated commitment to medical excellence need apply. The deadline is in 3 months. As Toby and Amika walked home that evening, their conversation was electric with possibility. "Toby, this na our chance, oh?" Amika said, his arm around his younger brother's shoulder. "Imagine studying medicine for Canada. The exposure, the technology, the opportunities." Toby's eyes sparkled with the same dreams. "And after graduation, we go get job immediately. No waiting for house job or struggling to find placement. We fit even bring our family to visit Canada." That evening, as the boys excitedly shared the scholarship news with their parents, Elizabeth listened with a growing knot in her stomach. She watched Toby's animated explanation, saw the way David's eyes shone with pride, and felt something ugly uncoiling in her chest like a snake in the grass. "The requirements are very high," she said carefully. "CGPA of 4.5, no be small thing." "But Toby get 4.7 already," Emeka said proudly, "and I get 4.3. If I work extra hard this semester, I fit reach 4.5. Elizabeth's smile felt like broken glass. Toby already qualified effortlessly, while her son will struggle to meet the minimum requirements. Later that night, as David slept peacefully beside her, Elizabeth stared at the ceiling of their master bedroom, her mind churning like Lagos traffic during a go-slow. The boy, sleeping down the corridor, David's precious son from his first marriage, was once again positioned to outshine her own child. For 5 years, she had pushed down these feelings, had forced herself to love Toby as her own. But now, faced with the possibility that he might secure a future that could slip away from Emeka, the mask she had worn so perfectly began to crack. "It's not fair," she whispered to the darkness. "Emeka is my blood. He deserves this chance too." As weeks passed, and both boys threw themselves into their studies with renewed intensity, Elizabeth found herself watching, calculating, planning. She began to pay closer attention to their schedules, their documents, their preparations. She noticed how Toby's application was shaping up to be exceptional. Perfect grades, glowing recommendations, leadership positions in student organizations. Meanwhile, Emeka, despite his best efforts, was still struggling to bring his CGPA up to the required level. One evening, while helping Emeka organize his scholarship documents, Elizabeth held Toby's perfectly crafted application in her hands. The solution came to her like a Lagos trader spotting a profitable deal. The boys looked so similar now, both tall, both handsome, both carrying the Adebayo name. Their passport photographs could easily be confused by someone who didn't know them intimately. As she sat in the soft glow of their study room, surrounded by the dreams and aspirations of 2 young men, Elizabeth Okoye Adebayo made a decision that would poison everything beautiful their family had built. The loving stepmother was about to become something else entirely. The scholarship application deadline was 8 weeks away. In 8 weeks, 2 boys would submit their dreams to the Canadian authorities. But only Elizabeth knew that by then, the applications would tell a very different story than the one being written by honest hands. In her heart, a mother's love had curdled into something dangerous, and in the bustling city of Lagos, where truth and deception danced together like partners in an elaborate masquerade, the greatest betrayal was about to begin. The elders say, "Ajati ako funni aran, uj aran ara e." The dog that is not given meat will eat its own flesh. Elizabeth Okoye Adebayo was about to prove how hunger for success can make even the most loving heart consume itself. 6 weeks before the scholarship deadline, the Adebayo household hummed with focused energy. Toby and Emeka had transformed into academic warriors, their days structured like military campaigns. Classes at Unilag from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., library sessions until 8 p.m., then home for dinner and more studying until midnight. Their Lekki home had become a fortress of ambition. The dining table disappeared under medical textbooks, the walls were covered with anatomy charts, and the sound of medical terminology filled the air like incantations from traditional healers. "Toby, your application done ready?" Emeka asked one evening, looking up from his own paperwork spread across the sitting room floor like pieces of a complex puzzle. Toby nodded, a mixture of pride and nervousness in his voice. "Everything complete. Academic transcripts, recommendation letters from Professor Adeyemi and Dr. Bankole, leadership certificates from the Student Medical Association, and my personal statement." Elizabeth, who had been quietly folding baby Falake's clothes nearby, felt her chest tighten. Toby's application was flawless, a golden ticket to a future that seemed designed for him alone. "What about you, Emeka?" David asked, settling into his favorite chair with the satisfaction of a father watching his sons chase greatness. Emeka's sigh carried the weight of Lagos traffic during a thunderstorm. "My CGPA finally reached 4.5 last week, but barely. My application's strong, but—" He gestured toward Toby's perfectly organized documents. "Toby's application na masterpiece. He gets better chances." Elizabeth's hands stilled on the tiny dress she was folding. In that moment, watching her biological son acknowledge his stepbrother's superiority, something crystallized in her heart like ice forming on a harmattan morning. 2 weeks later, both boys received the news they had been praying for. They had been shortlisted for interviews. The Canadian Scholarship Committee would conduct virtual interviews with the top 30 candidates, and from these, only 5 would be selected. The house erupted in celebration that rivaled a Lagos wedding reception. David ordered a cake from Sweet Sensation, and even little Amara and Falake seemed to understand that something momentous was happening. 2 sons, both shortlisted, David announced to anyone who would listen. Neighbors, colleagues, church members. God don bless this family well. But as the interview date approached, the pressure intensified like a Lagos generator running low on fuel. Toby, with his natural confidence and superior academic record, seemed to glide through the preparation. His practice interviews were flawless, his responses thoughtful and articulate. Emeka, despite his best efforts, struggled with the complex medical scenarios the interviewers were likely to present. Elizabeth watched her son stumble through practice questions, saw the frustration building in his eyes, and felt her own desperation growing like floodwaters during rainy season. 3 days before the interviews, fate handed Elizabeth the opportunity she had been unconsciously waiting for. David was called away on an emergency. A major construction project in Abuja required his immediate attention, and he would be gone for a week. "Take care of the house, my love," he said, kissing Elizabeth goodbye at Murtala Muhammad Airport. "Make sure the boys stay focused on their interviews." That evening, Elizabeth prepared dinner with the mechanical precision of someone whose mind was elsewhere. As the family gathered around their dining table, she watched Toby and Emeka discuss their final preparations, and her decision crystallized like palm oil cooling in a clay pot. "Toby, your documents stay safe?" she asked casually, serving jollof rice with the same hands that were about to commit an unthinkable betrayal. "Yes, Mama E," Toby replied, using the nickname he had called her for 5 years. "Everything day inside the blue folder for my room. Interview na tomorrow evening." After dinner, as the household settled into sleep, Elizabeth lay awake, listening to the sounds of Lagos at night, the distant hum of generators, the occasional car on the Lekki-Epe Expressway, the whisper of ocean breeze through their windows. At 2 a.m., when even the most restless Lagos residents had surrendered to sleep, Elizabeth rose from her bed like a ghost with a mission. Moving through her own home like a thief, Elizabeth crept to Toby's room. The boy slept peacefully, one arm thrown across his pillow, looking younger than his 16 years. For a moment, maternal love warred with desperate ambition in her chest. But the thought of Emeka's struggles, of his slightly lower grades, of his increasing anxiety about the interview, hardened her resolve like clay in a kiln. The blue folder sat on Toby's study desk like a treasure chest. Inside were all the documents that represented years of academic excellence, transcripts showing a perfect 4.7 CGPA, glowing recommendation letters, certificates of leadership, and most importantly, his passport photograph attached to the application form. With fingers that trembled like leaves in harmattan wind, Elizabeth extracted every document. Then she moved to Emeka's room, where her biological son slept with the same innocent trust. The next hour became a masterclass in deception. Elizabeth carefully replaced Toby's photograph with Emeka's on the application form. She switched the academic transcripts, ensuring that Emeka's name was now attached to Toby's superior grades. The recommendation letters were altered with surgical precision, names changed, details modified, lies woven into truth so seamlessly that even she began to believe them. By 4 a.m., the deed was done. Toby's achievements now bore Emeka's name, while Emeka's modest accomplishments were transferred to Toby's application. The real Toby, the brilliant, hard-working boy who had earned every A, every honor, every praise, had been erased from his own future with the efficiency of a Lagos demolition crew. Elizabeth returned to her bed, her heart pounding like talking drums at a traditional festival. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, stolen a future that could never be returned. The next evening, both boys sat before their computers for the virtual interviews, unaware that one of them was living a lie. Emeka, now armed with Toby's superior credentials, answered questions with newfound confidence. The interviewers, impressed by his exceptional academic record, smiled and nodded approvingly. Toby, handicapped by Emeka's modest transcripts, struggled to explain discrepancies between his apparent grades and his deep knowledge. The interviewers looked puzzled when this articulate, brilliant young man seemed to have academic records that didn't match his obvious intelligence. "According to your transcripts, you scored B3 in anatomy," one interviewer noted, "but your understanding of cardiovascular systems is exceptional. Can you explain this inconsistency?" Toby's confusion was genuine and heartbreaking. I don't understand, sir. I scored A1 in anatomy. There must be some mistake." The interviewers exchanged glances. Red flags were being raised about this candidate's credibility. 2 weeks later, the scholarship results arrived via email. Elizabeth was alone in the house when the notifications came, having made sure to intercept them before the boys returned from school. Emeka Adebayo, successful, full scholarship to University of Toronto. Congratulations on your exceptional academic achievement. Elizabeth stared at the screen, her hands shaking like someone with malaria fever. She had done it. She had stolen a future and given it to her son. But as the weight of her actions settled on her shoulders like a heavy load of cassava, she felt no joy. Only the hollow ache of someone who had murdered their own soul. When the boys came home that evening, Elizabeth delivered the news with the acting skills of a Nollywood veteran. "Emeka, my son, you got the scholarship," she screamed, embracing him with tears that were both joyful and guilty. Emeka's shock was genuine. But how? Toby was more qualified. "Sometimes God has his own plans," Elizabeth said, the lies flowing like oil from her tongue. Toby's devastation was a dagger to her heart. The boy she had raised for 5 years, the child who called her Mama E, stood in their sitting room with tears streaming down his face, not understanding how his dreams had been stolen by the woman he trusted most. "I don't understand," Toby whispered. "My grades were higher. My application was stronger. How did this happen?" Elizabeth held him as he cried, her own tears mixing with his, knowing that she was comforting the victim of her own crime. That night, as Lagos slept under its blanket of stars and smog, two futures hung in the balance. In 6 months, one boy would board a plane to Canada carrying stolen dreams, while another would watch his rightful future disappear into the Atlantic sky. Elizabeth Okoye Adebayo had gotten what she thought she wanted, but as she lay beside her sleeping husband, staring at the ceiling where shadows danced like guilty secrets, she realized that some victories come at the cost of everything we once held sacred. The seeds of deception had been planted. Soon they would grow into a harvest of destruction that would consume them all. There's an Igbo saying, "Onye na aga agu nulo ya, nugu ka oga ebute ya." He who fights a tiger at home will meet a lion in the forest. Emeka Adebayo was about to discover that stolen credentials are tigers that follow you wherever you go. The departure lounge at Murtala Muhammad Airport buzzed with the energy of dreams taking flight. Emeka stood with his family, his Canadian study visa gleaming in his passport like a golden ticket to paradise. Elizabeth clutched his hand, her smile bright enough to power half of Lagos, while guilt gnawed at her heart like termites in old wood. "My son, you go make us proud," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks, tears of joy and terror mixed together like palm oil and water. David embraced his stepson with genuine pride. "Emeka, study hard, represent the Adebayo name well. This now once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." Toby stood slightly apart, his own smile forced but sincere. Despite his disappointment, he hugged his stepbrother tightly. "Make us proud, brother. Show them say Nigerian students no be joke." As Emeka's flight to Toronto was called, he walked toward his future, carrying documents that belonged to another, his heart heavy with excitement and an uneasiness he couldn't name. Elizabeth watched him disappear through security, and in that moment, she felt the full weight of what she had done. She had stolen her stepson's dreams to give her biological son a chance. But at what cost? Toby stood at the glass window, watching the plane that should have carried him taxi toward the runway. His reflection in the glass showed a young man trying to hold himself together, trying to understand how years of hard work and perfect grades had somehow resulted in rejection and disappointment. As Emeka's plane lifted into the Lagos sky, disappearing into the clouds like a dream fading at dawn, neither brother knew that this moment would lead to tragedy, death, scandal, and a family torn apart by the very deception that seemed like love. The seeds of deception had been planted in darkness. Now they would grow across oceans, bearing fruit that no one could have imagined. Fruit that would poison lives, destroy careers, and ultimately force a reckoning that would shake the Adebayo family to its very foundations. What happens when stolen dreams meet reality? What price will be paid when lies meet the life and death stakes of medical practice? How will a family survive when the truth they've buried comes rising from its grave? In part 2 of Seeds of Deception, we'll follow Emeka to Canada, where his inadequate skills will meet the demanding world of cardiac surgery. We'll watch Toby rebuild his shattered dreams with integrity and determination, and we'll witness the devastating moment when Elizabeth's carefully constructed lies collapse like a house of cards, taking everything and everyone with them. 3 innocent lives will be lost. A mother's deception will be exposed. A family will be destroyed. And 2 brothers will face a truth so painful that forgiveness itself will seem impossible. If this story has gripped your heart, if you need to know what happens when truth finally catches up with lies, then you cannot miss Part 2. Click that subscribe button right now, hit the notification bell, and make sure you're here when we release the shocking conclusion to this tale of ambition, betrayal, and the devastating cost of stolen dreams. Drop a comment below and tell us what you think will happen next. Will Emeka succeed in Canada, or will his lies catch up with him? Will Toby ever discover the truth? And when Elizabeth's deception is finally exposed, can this family ever heal? We'll see you in Part 2, where the truth breaks the dawn and the harvest of deception is finally revealed. Until then, remember, truth may be bitter, but it is always better than the sweetest lie.